Hi, welcome to the Clive Barker Podcast, episode 104. Barbie Wilde, you might know as the female Cenobite in Hellraiser 2 Hellbound, returns to talk to us about her new book, a short story compilation called Voices of the Damned. So now, before we get into that, a quick word about our Kickstarter.
There's a whole lot more coming.
The biggest unanswered question is where is the money?
There's a whole lot more coming.
The biggest unanswered question is where is the
There's a
money?
whole lot more coming.
Where is the money?
Yeah, before we get to this interview with Barbie Wilde, we want to talk about our Kickstarter, and we want to thank everybody that's contributed so far. I mean, we're at this point that we're recording, we're nearly 800% of our original goal.
Oh my God, this has been so much fun.
Yeah.
This has been so
Yeah.
exciting. And thank you so much to everybody who's been supporting us. And we will be sure to thank everybody properly on the website, on the podcast, on Twitter. We'll be sure to thank everybody who's been supporting us in this Kickstarter.
For sure.
It's been a lot of work, but it's
been worth it.
Yeah.
And you're gonna, in the future, you're gonna be seeing a lot of really cool audio commentaries and video reviews that were stretch goals from the Kickstarter campaign. And in fact, we had stretch goals that went out to $700, and we thought there's no way we're going to pass $700. Well, we did, and so we had our original goal. We had all of our stretch goals. We had to create a whole new set of stretch goals because of the generosity of all of you listeners out there.
That's right. And some of the movies aren't even bad. They're really good.
Yeah, exactly. So we went through all the bad movie ones, and now we're starting into good movie commentaries.
Yeah.
And other cool projects. There's one project that Rob, that you and Jose have been working on for a while, or talking about and planning.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a mini documentary about Hellraiser Bloodline.
Yeah, that movie went through a very complicated production process, and there were several. Well, it's an Alan Smithy movie, really. I mean, so you can see that none of the directors even wanted their name on it, and they just finished that movie basically because they wanted to keep the rights for 5 and 6, which turned out to be really weird movies as well, not very successful. But so Bloodline was really the last movie that we saw of Hellraiser in the theaters. After that, it became completely direct to video. Except for maybe Revelations, because I think Revelations premiered in one cinema in the U.S.
or something. It did. That's right.
Yeah, but still, for all intents and purposes, it's still a direct-to-video. And by the way, we're going to have to do an audio commentary for Hellraiser Revelations.
Yeah, gee, thanks guys.
Yeah. I mean, I refused to buy it, so I've rented it on iTunes twice. So I've already spent more than the movie is worth renting it. So now I'm going to have to decide, well, do I just buy the stupid movie now, or am I going to rent it again?
I know, yes. Hellraiser Revelations, Rawhead Rex, even the Yattering and Jack, I think, right?
Yeah, we just hit the Yattering and Jack today.
Yes, a few hours ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know it out there, and it's from Tales from the Dark Side, a TV show that used to play back in the 90s. So it's very funny because...
Yeah.
Or unintentionally funny, because the Yattering is played by a little person painted in red, and you'll see it.
Troll.
That's right. Yeah,
He's played Troll, and he was in Willow too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I can't remember. I don't know his name, but
yeah. And we're only $3 off from our next one, which is Quicksilver Highway,
which has Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah.
Right.
And Max Headroom.
Yeah, Max Headroom. Yeah, he's the body politic.
Yeah.
And Clive Barker is in there too.
Yeah. It's cameo. Yeah.
He's like a surgeon, I think, or a doctor.
That's right. So we'll be doing commentaries for that. We'll be talking about little trivia for the movie. I don't promise we'll do funny jokes, but we'll try to do some jokes in the movie.
We'll see.
Some of those we're gonna have to do some jokes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have my notes for Transmutations already. I even went so far as to find some really interesting trivia about what car Roy Bain drives in Transmutations. It's a Jaguar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm coming up with a lot of useless information that now you too can know about these movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we'll be recording that one fairly soon just because we've got so many of these to do that we want to kind of get a jump on them. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys. I'm not super looking forward to seeing Transmutations again, but
you know what? It's going to be funny for me because most of these movies, I've watched them by myself.
Me too. Yeah, and which is why I always fall asleep when I watch Transmutations.
Yeah, it's so,
With 3 people talking, it's going to be a lot more fun because we can
Yeah.
kind of riff on the movie a little bit and talk about this and that. But so, yeah, watching Transmutations by yourself can be a narcotic experience.
It's a drag. Yeah, for sure.
It's a drag.
Thanks to the decision of Rob and Ryan, which I admit to do under protest, we will not be doing the 88-minute version of Transmutations. We'll be doing the 103-minute version of Transmutations.
Yeah, the 15-minute extra version.
A whamming 15 minutes of...
I'm sure those 15 minutes are pure gold.
I know. Gold,
Yeah.
Jerry, gold. Make sure you find that Laserdisc or that VHS because that's the version we're going to be talking about.
Here we go.
For completest sake.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, but yeah, there's still lots and lots of time. I mean, we're only 1 week into the Kickstarter, and there's still lots of time. We've got really cool backer rewards. I think there's still 2 autographed Clive Barker book baskets.
Mm-hmm.
We'll sell as many T-shirts as we can, and we've got thumb drives with all of our episodes on them. In which you get an 8 gigabyte thumb drive. You can even delete all our stuff off of it and just have a thumb drive.
Please put it on your iTunes or iPod first or Zune.
Yeah, there you go. 100 episodes is like 5 gigabytes, I figured out.
Yeah, we'll get like an 8 gigabyte one. So these rewards, we would never ask you for money without giving you something in return. Whether it's in hard work or in actual material stuff. Also, we'd like to thank Century Guild, Clive Barker, and Seraphin for sending us books for this, which they've also sponsored our previous fundraiser last year with some donations. You're helping us divulge more stuff about Clive Barker's work and what's he up to, and there's a new book that's going to come out. Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys want to talk about the new book announcements?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It seems like the Black is the Devil's Rainbow, and this is completely my speculation, but it seems like that book of short stories that started out being the Scarlet Gospels, and then, the story of Pinhead and Harry D'Amour kind of took that over, and then it became Black is the Devil's Rainbow, and then it became Black is the Devil's Rainbow Tales of a Journeyman. And so now it's going to be called Tonight Again, and it's already available for pre-order. It's going to be coming from Subterranean Press, and this is going to be 160 pages of short stories. And the subtitle for this movie is Tales of Love, Lust, and Everything in Between.
Short stories and poems.
With drawings in there, too, I believe.
Yeah, it says here it contains more than 30 primarily erotic short stories and vignettes, most of them previously unpublished, along with explicit illustrations by the author in his signature style. As an exploration of extremes in lush prose and provocative images, Tonight Again is not to be missed by the author's many fans. And as usual, Subterranean Press has several choices of book quality. So you started the trade edition at $30. You have the limited edition that's going to be $125, and the lettered edition is going to be $350.
And the trade edition is not a slouch. I mean, for $30, it's still a cloth-bound hardcover.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's only limited to 1,000 copies, which is kind of weird that they call trade edition and then there's a limited edition because they're both limited. It's just that the limited edition is limited to 224 signed numbered copies, and the trade edition is just 1,000 cloth-bound hardcover.
Well, and this is a big deal because they're mostly previously unreleased. I mean, I think the story Dolly is on there, and that one's been released on a compilation of other stories, but all the rest of that stuff I didn't recognize at all. They've got a list of the stories that are in this one.
I'm going to pre-order this book tomorrow. I know you guys have already pre-ordered it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got mine in there.
There's only 997 left.
Yeah, with only 1,000 copies, I'd recommend everybody that wants to get this to probably do it now. Because that's the most common one, is there's only 1,000 copies.
And so this is going to be published in early 2016. So, get in this, guys, because 997 copies and flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's your chance to read some more stories.
Yeah. And going back to what you said about Kickstarter, you had said that we wouldn't just ask for money without giving you something. We're actually kind of doubling up on that because we have stretch goals where we're providing something, some extra bonus stuff in our podcast feed and YouTube feeds and on our site, and in addition to actually getting something in the mail as a backer reward.
Sure. You can also advertise on the podcast.
We already have one person who signed in to get advertising for an entire year. We don't know what that's going to be yet, but yeah. And Jennifer asked me about that. She said, what if it's like porn or something? And I'm like, well, if it's something Clive Barker related, we'll be happy to talk about it and, ourselves. And if it's something else, like, we'll let them make a commercial and we'll stick it on, I guess.
They're going to get in touch with us and we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
There's a reward level where you can suggest us a topic for an episode, and you can even join us if we manage to hit it off in terms of scheduling.
Yeah.
Those would be fun goals to do. If you want to be in the podcast, please consider that one.
Mm-hmm. We've got one person that's already picked that one, so we're going to have one episode like that already.
Okay, there we go.
I think that's pretty cool. I like that idea.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it for talking about the Kickstarter. We'll probably keep bugging you about that in the future. But let's move on into our interview with Barbie Wilde.
All right.
Hello.
Hey, Barbie, how are you?
I'm fine. My God, I had the ringer off of my phone.
Oh, okay.
I just happened to look down and see your little faces waiting for me.
We were just admiring your Skype photo there. Was that you? Because you had one just like that with the book. So was this photoshopped in, or did you repose for this one?
I can't remember. I think that I don't remember if this was the actual original one. It might have just been a Photoshop with me holding my Fangoria feature. The original one might have been me holding Scream magazine. Yeah. No,
I always thought that Venus Complex was the original one.
Oh, it could be. It's so much Photoshop has gone past. I've become sort of a, you're only as good as what you look like on Facebook. A friend of mine was said, don't people get shocked when they meet you in person? Which I thought was a very ungallant thing to say, actually. But I just have to go and rub Vaseline over their eyes when they can meet me in person.
Well, I mean, if we can't tell if that's Photoshop or not. So I think you did a good job of putting that magazine in there.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying now to do sort of original pointy shots now for everything.
Oh, okay.
I get involved with. I think it's the least I can do. So, actually, I'm going to have a sip of coffee while you talk.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, I know it's early in the morning over there, right?
I'm not a morning person, but I've actually been up for 2 hours. But
wow.
Yeah, so because I am not a morning person, it takes me a long time to sort of get in gear.
Well, hopefully you can make up for it later. We were just talking about, before you came on, we were talking about the last time you were on. We didn't realize it's been so long, but it was November 17th, 2012, right after the or just before the Venus Complex was being released.
Yeah, I think it was November 2nd and the Venus Complex got released. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it was just afterwards. After. Yeah, oh goodness, that really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Was that with all three of us? Was that with
Rob wasn't on the
not.
podcast back then.
Yeah, it was just me, Jose, and Ryan.
So that's 3 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you've been keeping busy.
Yes, I have.
We were going to have a part 2 where you came back and talked about Grizzly 2.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and
Oh, God.
George Clooney.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and George were just like that. We've always kept in touch. That's a complete lie. I don't think I ever saw him, but of course he was probably, he was a red shirt who got eaten by the bear. So he was sort of milling around in the forest somewhere, and I was up on stage being a robotic drummer, Even if I had met him, I'd probably want, who's that floppy-haired geezer? He looks like such a nerd.
Was that around the time that he made Return of the Killer Tomatoes?
Don't know. I haven't got the his dates at my fingertips, but I think Grizzly was 85, 86.
Okay.
I don't know what the date. Wasn't it Return of the Killer Tomatoes 2?
Yeah, exactly. So Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, and then
they made a sequel to it. I didn't know that.
So I think he was in the movie because he had like a rich uncle that helped pay for the movie.
Which one? Killer Tomatoes?
Yeah, Return of the Killer Tomatoes.
Oh, I'm glad, because I think that whoever invested in Grizzly 2 lost their shirt.
Yeah, sure.
Sadly.
Yeah.
But, as we mentioned before, what a cast. Louise Fletcher and...
Laura Dern, was she in that?
Yeah, she gets eaten by the bear too, and Martin Sheen.
Yeah.
They got eaten by the bear in the first 10 minutes.
That is one hungry bear.
Yeah, well, a non-existent one. They just sort of had to scream and flap their arms around at nothing. Maybe it was a prop guy dressed in a bear suit or something to give it a bit more impetus. But the bear never made it out of the workshop. They had this massive mechanical bear, which I foolishly passed on seeing. I don't know why I was so lacking in interest. Well, we're all going to go to the studio and see the mechanical bear. Barbie, do you want to come? And I was like, oh, no. I'd rather go and look at the Danube or whatever it was. So.
For that movie, you were in the band, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was the band supposed to get eaten?
No, I don't think so. We were on stage, and the bear was rampaging around the edges of the crowd, munching on people, I think.
I have a copy of the movie, Ryan. I'll give one to you later.
Okay.
I must admit, I think the author Mark Morris said, I just finished watching Grizzly 2 and I can't see Barbie Wilde anywhere in it. I said, oh, no. But, of course, I am just a little distant figure. I think I'm in a rehearsal scene and an bizarre exercise scene. But Bruno Tonioli, who's quite famous for Strictly Come Dancing, I think, or whatever, one of those reality shows where people dance around, he did all the choreography. So it's all very, flamboyant stuff. But, of course, I was just being a drummer, so I didn't have to dance around, thank God. But
you were a drummer?
I was the robotic drummer of the band.
I didn't. I thought it would have been more like Shock, I guess.
No. The story was that my boyfriend at the time, Richard James Burgess, who was a producer of Spandau Ballet and Five Star and all these, bands, he was asked to produce the music, which was quite extraordinary, actually. I love the music, this electronic duo from Birmingham. And he loved the music, and he was supposed to play the drummer because he did all the drumming in the tracks. And then he got a job offer to produce Adam Ant in Stockholm. And he said, I'm no actor, He said, why don't you do it? And I said, I've never held a pair of drumsticks in my life. He said, I can teach you how to do it. Wow. So we had these training sessions, and I basically learned how to mime drumming to those particular tracks. But I did it in a kind of slightly robotic way, and I had the bright blue hair, and I was wearing blue leather outfits, and it was quite exciting. And then after I came back from Hungary, I somehow managed to get these gigs as a mime drummer with this. Can you believe this ridiculous career I've had? There was a band called Rondo Veneziano, and they had put all these classic tracks, like Vivaldi and things like that, to this rather pathetic 80s electro beat. They picked out some young girls, and we were all dressed in sort of strange metallic masks, but as Renaissance folk. And I was dressed as a boy, and I had to do the robotic drumming for these tracks. I had all these PR, publicity appearances for Rondo Veneziano. It was actually a very, very popular album. But I made a brief small career as a mime drummer.
Probably not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah, I've never been heard of that. So,
and now you're a successful author with
Yes, thank God. I've finally grown up. And Nico Vince once said, when actors grow up, they become writers. But I will always hold on to my being terminally immature image. But yes, I am now writing.
So since we talked to you last, you've written a lot of short stories, and looks like the most of them have been compiled into this book, Voices of the Damned.
Yes, well, the first short story I wrote, actually, which is the first story in the Nth collection, and it's got the wonderful Clive Barker art to it.
Yes.
Kiss Me. It's called Kiss Me. Was written in 2009 for the Hellbound Hearts anthology. And Paul Kane and Maria Reagan, Paul had interviewed me for his Hellraiser Legacy, the films of Hellraiser book. Yeah. And I'd shown him a couple of bits I'd written for the Venus Complex. And he said, Barbie, why don't you write a story for the Hellbound Hearts anthology? And I said, oh, I don't really write horror. I'm much more interested in crime and, noirish stuff. And he said, no, you really should give it a go. And I wrote the short story in a week, which has never happened since. And I'd actually written a story so quickly. And I started getting reviews for it. And it was picked out as one of the favorites of that particular anthology. And someone said, wow, it's like releasing singles before your album comes out. So if someone asked me if I wanted to write a short story, I just would say yes for these anthologies. And so I sort of built up. And so when the book came out, I was able to this is what people have said about my writing, which really helps if you're a new author.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought I had about 2 or 3 stories out, but, it does build. I mean, they mostly are. I have to give a big tip of the hat to Paul Kane and Maria Reagan. I've had 2 stories for them, Hellbound Hearts and Polyp for the Mammoth Book of Body Horror, and Dean Drinkle for a lot of my phobia stories, and 3 other anthologies of his.
Oh, yeah, the Demonologia Biblica, I think.
Never contribute to an anthology that you can't pronounce the name of. No, the Demologica Biblica, the Grimorium Verum, and the Bestiarium Vocabulum.
Yeah,
wow.
he likes
fancy titles.
Yes, yeah.
I think Nicholas Vince was also in one of those, right? The Demonology.
Yes, he was in the Demological one.
Yeah.
But then he thought, I want to, release my own collections, which he has to, some wonderful critical reviews and stuff. So, that worked for him. But I think sometimes it's good to say, somebody comes up to you and say, okay, you've got the letter Z or Z, as they say over in the UK. Mm-hmm. You have to write a sort of beastie story, starting with it. And it's like, oh my God, that's horrible. And I looked up, Z, and I thought, God, there's only Chinese dragons and zombies. I hate zombies. I find zombies really boring. I know it's really unpopular to say that. And then somebody said, oh, wow, what about Zulu zombies in London or something? I went, whoa, that's really strange. And that's where that particular story came from. And then I was contacted by Chris Alexander, because he had done a wonderful little feature in one of the Fangorias about my writing. And he said, do you have any writing? I'm restarting Gore Zone. And I said, well, I've got this really disgusting zombie story. Do you want it? And he published it. It was also, republished in Gore Zone. 3 of my stories have been republished in Gore Zone, which is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Because it gets a little bit of publicity for the antho, and, more people get to read it. But I think that for the most part, these stories, even though they have been in previous anthologies, they're probably fairly unknown to most people.
Yeah.
I've never read any of them.
It's great to have them all anthologized into one book like this. And of course, the Clive Barker art is really awesome, too.
Oh, it's just, isn't it wonderful? And it's strange because as soon as I saw, bless him, Clive and Mark Miller gave me sort of, hey, whatever you want to use, blah, blah, blah. And so I thought, oh, God, I just love Kiss Me. I think that's perfect for this sort of, in many ways, it's Sister Celeste before her metamorphosis, if you like. It's like how ugly her soul is and how beautiful it is when she becomes a fallen angel. And then the Princess Breath for Gaia. I don't know why. I saw that. I thought that's perfect for Gaia. And then the cover, I just fell in love with She Waits for the cover, and it was amazing. Absolutely fine. But then, the actual first person who signed on was Danielle Serra, who did the cover for the Venus Complex.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And I just love his work, and so he did 2 stories, Valeska and Writer's Block. And because I got those 2 wonderful artists on board, it was, I just contacted Nick Percival, and he came back. And I mean, I love his work for the Boom Hellraiser comics.
Oh yeah, the
for
covers
everything
that he's
he does.
Done. Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, but he's doing work with John Carpenter now and stuff, and his stuff is just brilliant. But every one of those pieces of art. Vincent Sammy's American Mutant and Steve McGuinness.
Exactly. That is brilliant.
Oh, I've got a girlfriend of mine who's she's a sort of a high goth, but also very intelligent, a philosophy professor, and she goes, "Oh, I just love Mikey. I want to marry him." And I went, "Whoa!" But he does look deliciously, sweetly evil, doesn't he? An evil Billy Mummy. Ben Baldwin's Alpdruck and Steve McGuinness's Polyp. So disgusting. And, of course, Eric Gross's work for the Silesian Pandoric and Silesian Rebellion. I think I've mentioned. Oh, and Tara Bush. I love her haunting Botophobia artwork. I hope I've mentioned all the artists. I think I have, because they're so important to this. It was my dream, really, to put together a collection and have an artwork with everyone. Every story.
Artwork sets the tone in such a lovely way. It kind of prepares you for the next story.
Yes, it does. And I feel so privileged and honored to have all these wonderful artists contribute work to this. And I'm so thrilled with what they came back with. It's wonderful. And it's all there, other than the Clive artwork. They all just read the work and then just did the art. And,
that's really cool.
And I didn't really sort of I didn't want to give too much direction to any of them because I just wanted to see what they would come up with, and it's been wonderful.
And it's not often or ever really that you see a story compilation with full color paintings between each story.
I know. Well, the publisher, Paul Fry, who's been so absolutely wonderful. We've really been hand in hand with this one. But he contacted me after because he was doing something with Danielle Serra and Joe Lansdale called I Tell You It's Love. And it was sort of it was a graphic novel type idea in color. And I'd done a review for that on Amazon, but also for Danny's Veins and Skulls, again, another art book. And he said, listen, I've just read your Venus Complex, and if you ever feel like, you want to do something, please think of me and my publishing company. And I came right back and said, would you be interested in doing a collection of my short stories plus the artwork in color? And we just talked about it, and it was first talked about in black and white, and then when he started seeing what the artwork looked like coming back, he said, oh, it's got to be color.
That's one of the things about Hellbound Hearts that was missing. It was the color in the illustrations.
Yeah.
It was sad that that wonderful stuff didn't come through in color. Yeah. But it was only that one story, and you can see it is expensive, and now we're doing a deluxe version as well with premium print. So the artwork's going to look really beautiful. So it will be like an art book.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's great. So there are 2 versions, the trade hardback with standard print and the premium print version. That's the deluxe version. And with that deluxe version, if you order it direct from the publisher, you'll get a paperback, larger, like almost like a comic book size paperback of just the artwork.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's sort of like a collector's edition thing. So yes, check it out on SST Publications.
So Chris Alexander starts with the foreword, and I think he opens it really beautifully. We're not gonna spoil anything, but I'm just gonna read the first line that he says. I first encountered Barbie Wilde the same way most of you reading this foreword did as well. Bald, white, pierced, and poured into black leather. I just think that's a brilliant opening for the foreword right there.
Yes, I know. It was wonderful, really, because I contacted him way back when the book for Venus Complex first came out through YouTube, because he would do like this little what's going to happen in Fangoria, and I sent him a message through YouTube and said, listen, I know that Fangoria the year before had done an interview with me and Simon Banford called A Tale of Two Cenobites, what we're doing. I said, listen, I've just got this book out, would you like to review it or something? And he just went, Barbie, I'd love to. And he's been so, as I've said in my thank yous, he's been so supportive. And it's been a little bit of a struggle getting people to, people like to put you, like I say in my thank you, they like to put you in an actress box. And he's been so supportive of my writing that it was natural to have him write the foreword. And it's been great having someone like Chris be so enthusiastic and understand my what did he say? He said, it's been wonderful to see how Barbie's writing fans have been seduced by the vile charms of Venus Complex.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny because you sent me a copy of the book when I reviewed it, and I happened to be traveling to Paris like 2 days afterwards, because I had to go to the United States Embassy in Paris, which is close to the Champs-Élysées. And so I ended up taking the book with me. So I read most of the Venus Complex actually in Paris, in between trips to the Louvre. So
wonderful. No, that would be it would be so wonderful. The dream, basically, because is to have all of Michael's paintings, his favorite paintings that he uses as his inspiration, to be full color plates in the book. Mm-hmm. That would be. We were even talking about it, but it would have meant I would have had to write every one of those museums and all the photographers of the paintings to get the permission.
Oh, that's right.
And they often want cash.
Of course.
And so it was, because it's a very small publisher, I just thought, so what I did was just put the photographs on a hidden page on my website, and that's where, at the very beginning of the book, if you want to see the actual paintings that are mentioned in the Venus Complex, you can just go to the link on my website and see them.
Absolutely, and they complement the image in your mind when you're reading the book, really.
Yeah. I think, one day I will do that. Mm-hmm. But, because we've learned a lot from doing this book, because this is very different from what Paul does as well. I mean, he does collections of short stories, but he doesn't often do ones that have color artwork all the way through.
Yeah.
Because that sort of stays with the graphic novel sort of side of things.
Right.
So.
This
book opens with the Sister Celise story. And, of course, obviously, again, we're not going to spoil anything, but I was very happy to see this story come back from Hellbound Hearts and develop into a story arc, which is kind of the backbone of this anthology, I would say, and definitely is one of the best parts of this anthology are the three stories that compose this trilogy.
Well, of course, it is part of the. I met Eric Gross, the artist who did the other two Silesium trilogy.
Yeah.
Artworks, and he was part of a group called the Pyramid Gallery, and they were very much doing their own, puzzle boxes or Pandorics, as they're called. And he was the one who encouraged me to write a story about her getting her own Pandoric. So I did that, and then, but foolishly ended the book and it became known as the Great, Rebellion of the Female Cenobites. And Eric was always, occasionally would plaintively say, what's happened with this rebellion story then, I don't know why. It was very difficult to get my head around it. But then, I mentioned it to Paul, and he said, it'd be so great to have, the three Silesium stories in this collection. And that was, I thought the pressure was on, and I had to do it. it was funny because it probably was the most difficult to write, considering that Sister Celeste was the easiest short story I had to write. But in the end, I'm very pleased with how it came out. It was just sort of some of these images that popped into my head were just, where did that come from?
So Sister Veronica, she really is the almost the perfect female embodiment of Frank from Hellraiser in the way that she pursues her own gratification and her appetites.
Yeah.
Once Clive Barker said that appetite marks the monster like celibacy the nun, which I think is a brilliant sentence right there.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, it's interesting because it's terrible for me to admit, but I don't know that much about Clive's religious upbringing. But if I had to make a guess, it might have been sort of slightly similar to mine. My mother was, a lapsed Catholic. She always regretted not raising us Catholics. And, there was some point, I was very ill and I sort of made a deal with God, like the Kate Bush song, if I get well, I'll become a nun. And then I got well and I thought, well, forgive me. I'm not going to become a nun. But, it was all these, she would sneak me into, a Roman Catholic church when my dad wasn't looking because he was a scientist and we all went to church because that was expected. But he said, I like to go to church. I like to listen to the choir and hedge my bets, because he wasn't sure whether there was a God or not. But, to me, the whole sort of rituals of the Roman Catholic religion, it was kind of this kind of wonderful forbidden thing. And, Mom would, this is how you do the rosary, dear. Don't tell your father, And it was just sort of kind of not funny, but it was this sort of, I found the rituals quite intriguing and interesting. And they did have this sort of forbidden flavor to them. But I wasn't raised a Catholic, but I could see what the guilt did to her. She felt so guilty for things that she had absolutely no responsibility for whatsoever. I have very mixed feelings about Catholicism and religion in general.
Well, that's why when Veronica lets go of her guilt, that's when she truly transcends herself in the story.
But, it's all, there's so much, oh dear, how do I put it in a nice way? S&M imagery.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about all this horrible torture and, I used to see all the sort of paintings of the saints being sort of hideously tortured and that can do things to people's minds,
Or torturing themselves.
Well, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't make up a Celeste.
Exactly. Some people still use that Celeste thing today. I mean, there's the order Opus Dei where the men use a Celeste at least one day out of the week to remind themselves.
Exactly, and Silas in the Da Vinci Code uses it.
Exactly.
The assassin in the Da Vinci Code, and but I just thought, whoa! I like the sound of the name, but I actually thought, wow, do they really? But it is kind of like a hair shirt. It is to remind you of the suffering of our Savior.
I mean, coming from Portugal, I come from a very Catholic country. I mean, we come from the country that claims that three little shepherds saw the Virgin Mary and she told everybody.
Is that the Fatima?
Yes.
Is that
yes, exactly.
Yes. See, I know.
There's even a city called Fatima there now. And there's a big sanctuary, and there's the bullet that the Pope gave to the sanctuary from his murder attempt, and it's right there on her crown, which is kind of a weird choice, but I mean, that's what it is, really.
I find it all very fascinating. The things that we, well, I don't know if they, my mother told me, and I read the book about beautiful little girl who was kind of ruined by the church. Lourdes. What was her name? Bernadette.
Bernadette, right? Yeah.
Yes. So and it was Bernadette, wasn't it? And
so.
I just thought, oh my God! And they decided because she'd seen the Virgin Mary at Lourdes that she wanted to get married and have kids. Nope, she went into a convent because and it was. I just thought, oh no, it's so horrible, But no, it is fascinating, and that's why there's a lot of heartfeltness in her frustration and sadness and her feelings of guilt for no reason, Sister Veronica. So.
And you have some things going on with some of these stories, like Zulu Zombies. We'll get to it closer to the end, but for Sister Celeste's story, this is going to come at some point with a Pandoric box, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Sorry. Well, yes, Eric Gross did, in the second story, you can see he has designed this Pandoric, and he's constructing it. And he says it will happen, that this will become an entity in itself.
Wonderful.
So, but it would be a non-practical box.
Oh, darn.
Damn. No.
Darn.
I thought it was really interesting, similar to the Venus complex, that this is a character that you take turns feeling sympathy towards, and then it's like, oh, that was horrible.
Yes. Yeah. Well, hey, we all have our dark side, and that's the side that's always fascinated me. Whether I write about serial killers or it is our criminal side.
Yeah.
And I might have mentioned this in our first interview, but when I was a kid, I didn't want to read little girl stories. My mother was very dismayed. I was reading, I found Sherlock Holmes books in my father's library, and so I would read about. I loved Sherlock Holmes, but boy, did Moriarty. What a fascinating character. And I made up this sort of fake backstory for him to explain why he was so horrible and why he was the master of crime, because he was the one who fascinated me. So I've always been fascinated by, these characters who don't seem to care. They have no guilt.
Oh, yeah, that's right. In our previous interview with you, you confessed to liking police stories about serial killers.
Well, I started reading about serial killers very early on. Colin Wilson's The Order of the Assassin, and I'd never heard of them. I mean, you hear about people getting murdered, but the idea of these, as they call it, the lone wolf of society, picking off people on the edges or vulnerable people and stuff. I just went, whoa, who's Ted Bundy? I never heard of him. And then... this was many, many years ago. And, of course, the Internet, it's exploded. Everybody knows about serial killers now.
Yeah, Ted Bundy was my mom's paperboy.
Oh, my God, you're kidding.
No, they grew up in the same street as him in Tacoma.
Really?
That's like the title of a book. Ted Bundy was my mom's
that's a story right there.
Or the name of a band.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. He was one of the few, because I've interviewed a few policemen and they say, we've had serial killers, but a lot of them are dumber than a sack of hair, and they get caught really quickly. But he was one of the few intelligent ones, and he kept on going for years. It was very strange, that wonderful book, The Stranger Beside Me, about, he was working with this crime reporter at the Samaritans hotline.
Oh, wow.
And she said, I worked with this guy, for years, trying to persuade people not to commit suicide. But maybe she wasn't listening to him. Maybe he was secretly saying, hey, do it.
Well, and he was one of those stereotypical, like, oh, he always seemed so quiet and so good-natured.
He helped my wife build her bookshelves. It's just,
yeah.
He was my mom's paperboy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the best. Wow. Gosh, I'd be dining out on that one.
Speaking of quiet things, we go into Zulu Zombies. Zulu Zombies, after the opening of Sister Selice, and after reading your previous novel, The Venus Complex, I have to say, first of all, I hadn't read any of these stories except for Sister Selice before I read this anthology. So for me, this was almost a complete slate of experience reading these stories.
Mm-hmm.
Zulu Zombies opened up my mind to the concept of more experimental horror, because at the beginning I was unsure of where the story was going, and then as soon as it clicked in, it became really fun. It became a real roller coaster ride for me. Yeah, I think this would make a great movie, and actually you're working on a screenplay for this right now.
Yeah, I am, and it's a real problem, because I have gotten to the end of the script, but I just have to obviously expand it, because I've really, really got to put some creative time on it, because I love this idea. I think it would be great, and my dream, of course, is to somehow write a part for Michael Caine in it.
Oh, wow.
That would just be so cool.
Oh my gosh, reprising his role.
No, and a friend of mine said, well, you better hurry up. But I noticed he's still acting away, bless him. But, that would just be absolutely wonderful. No, it does seem very filmic, that. Although I'd like to think that a lot of the stories would be great. I'd love to see a movie made of Polyp, It'd be really gross.
That'd be a great
It would be
monster.
kind of like
Monster
Brain
movie.
Damage. Do you guys know Brain Damage?
Yeah.
Yes, I've heard of that. Yeah. Wasn't that was Peter Jackson's one of his first films?
Oh, that's Brain Dead.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
this is,
Brain Dead. Sorry.
yeah.
No, I haven't seen Brain Damage.
This is about kind of a brain polyp, really. A brain damage is about this brain tumor that kind of talks to the person and comes out of the ear, and it's fantastic. I mean, people got to see it.
Oh. Yee. But, it's funny because, that kind of visceral horror, it's not like necessarily what I like to particularly watch. And yet there I am creating disgustingly gross things like polyp and Zulu zombies. But it was I don't know where that idea came from, but I think it was just I definitely wanted to do something different with the whole zombie thing. It's the same with, you probably want to go story by story, but it's the same with Valeska in that there's so many stuff. And I've always loved vampires. They're my favorite monster. I think they're really sexy. To me, there's nothing really sexy about zombies and werewolves. But, it's just Christopher Lee in the horror of Dracula was like, whoa, that is
and
such
Valeska, you had adapted that from originally it was going to be a novel, right? That's what you told me earlier.
Yes, yeah, and it may still be a novel. I mean, one of the reviewers has said it's not actually out yet, but he said this is definitely ripe to be turned into a novel or a movie. So actually, it might be a bit difficult to be a movie considering how they get their substance. But hey, you can do anything in the movies nowadays. So yes, it did start out as a novel. And then I thought, well, why not put it into the collection as a short story? And it seemed to be, but I wanted it the ending to be very ambivalent. Because it could have been a big battle of vampires and stuff at the end, but no, I've got Battle of Demons at the end of Silesian Pandoric, so I just left it hanging for the idea of turning it into.
That's a great choice.
A novel.
And people mentioned Christopher Lee as Dracula, and I just remembered Christopher Lee was in Shaka Zulu as Lord Bathurst, I think.
Oh my God, no, I've never seen that movie. I did watch the movie Zulu again. To give me inspiration for the film script, really. But it was, or I think I might have, yes, it was to be inspired for the short story. And there is that wonderful moment when they can hear the Zulus coming, the men at Rorke's Drift. And the way they're chanting. And that's so I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
So, what is that sound? It sounds like a train. And it's a strange thing that sort of she has that sort of vision at the end of her ordeal. Poor old Trish. And that, Michael Caine's head, complete with pith helmet comes in and says that, because I found that a totally chilling moment in the movie because they couldn't figure out what the sound was. And it's actually 6,000 warriors coming to completely decimate, what was it? I can't remember. 180 British soldiers.
Stomping and stabbing.
It's very stomping. Chugga, 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 womp, womp, womp.
Yeah.
And I have a question. Where did the cowhide shields come from?
Oh, hey. It's a supernatural story.
It's a secret.
And it's a secret. It's all magic. It's all in the magic dust in the bottle stuff, I decided there are certain things that one doesn't want to explain. But certainly after, a few readings, one thinks, where do those shields come from?
Yeah, sometimes the mystery is better. It seems like when a sequel movie comes out and then they explain things, it kind of ruins it.
Well, I think the human mind, it's what it conjures up on its own, is so much more, sometimes more interesting if you don't get the full explanation, because that makes it scarier.
Yeah.
Obviously, the things that we think about that I pour into my stories. I mean, it's interesting because, just going on from my fears, because a lot of two of the stories are phobia stories. Uranophobia is called Gaia in the collection. Mm-hmm. But, I was given a U, and I thought, oh my God, again, it was this despair of, what am I going to write about? Because I really wanted to write about my own fear of home invasion. I think that's a very legitimate, who had ever known of home invasion back in the day? And so I thought, okay, uranophobia, fear of the god of the sky. How am I going to turn that into a fear of home invasion? Yeah. And there you see my story. So I managed to twist, uranophobia into a story about home invasion. So that was very satisfying.
I'd like to see a sequel to that story. You thought about doing another story of that character?
Well, no, I haven't actually. But it's sort of ambivalent what happens to her. Ride the lightning is a euphemism for the electric chair. But who knows? She could come back as an angry goddess. Why not?
Yeah.
No, I liked her character. It was very difficult for me, actually, after sort of spending a long time, and the Venus complex took a few years to get to fruition, to be in the mind of a man, to actually write sympathetically from the viewpoint of a woman again. I actually find it much more liberating writing from the viewpoint of a man, especially in first person. I know that might sound weird, but the Venus complex is written like a diary, and I had to pretend to be this guy who's sort of losing his head. Probably not that far from reality.
Well, and then this Gaia is kind of a shut-in.
Yes, yeah. Because of what that's not something that I really, and somebody once said, were you abused as a child? Because that's what you've written so feelingly about it. And I went, no, geez, I had a very unremarkable childhood, actually, in many ways, shapes and forms. I think through all of my stories and the book, it's always what are the motivations of the characters. That's what fascinates me. And to me, to create a good character, a character that really lives, and then you just let it scamper off and you follow in its wake and you write the story. To me, character is everything. Motivation is everything. And of course, plot is important too. But I think that those are the things that drive me. Why do people do these things? So why did she become a shut-in? Why is she afraid of being invaded? Well, this is why. She had this horrible experience as a young girl.
Yeah, but speaking of kids who really had bad experiences, I imagine little Mikey also had some pretty bad experiences growing up in American Mutant.
Yes, little Mikey. Yeah, God, it's so funny because that I got 0 reviews for that story when it came out. Yeah, and I thought, oh, nobody likes it. No one's mentioned it. I mean, one person on Amazon mentioned virtually every story except that one. Wow. And so when I read it again, I was thinking, oh, maybe, because people didn't really like the story very much.
Well, American
maybe
Mutant.
My favorites in this book.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
That's why I thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't include it. And then I read it. I hadn't looked at it for years. And then I read it again. And I went, I love this story. I love little Mikey.
Yeah.
And his hand of good and evil. And I love Billy Bob, too. I think he's such a wonderful character. And flame-haired Tiffany. And, I feel rather sorry for Billy Bob. And, But a friend of mine who's English said, oh, it's not one of my favorite stories because it was very American.
Yeah.
And they don't really have a lot of experience of that kind of thing. But I remember growing up, yet again, blame your childhood.
TV evangelist.
But, oh, my God, Billy Graham. Every time he was on TV, we had to sit there. My father would sort of fall asleep at one end of the couch, and my brother was playing his guitar on the other, and Mom and I were sort of, and I was like going, is anyone believing this stuff? I mean, my God, it's so boring. But there he was in his white suit, but he was very charismatic and individual. But then all the the Swaggerts and the Jimmy and Tammy.
Oh, Jimmy Swagger, yeah.
With the bankers and the Swaggerts and You just thought, oh boy.
Which one is it that said that if they didn't get $10 million, they were going to die?
God was going to kill them. Yeah.
Yeah, God was going to kill them.
The guy from the 700 Club or something? I forgot.
Or is that the guy who said that Katrina hit New Orleans because there were abortion clinics there or something?
Oh,
and that Katrina looked like a giant fetus over the... Oh, dear. So this is, I mean, you can't make it up. This is what people really say.
Yeah.
So, no, that was... yeah, I think Mikey probably had a slightly traumatic childhood, but he was probably a bit of a psychopath anyway, so it might not have made too much of a...
Yeah, Mikey didn't seem to have any kind of real attachment or feelings. He seemed more asocial, I guess.
Well, I think he is, yes, a very detached person, because he's some kind of conduit for the powers of good and evil. Yeah, that's, he was just a vessel for that. But I just loved the idea of making him look a bit like Billy Mummy from Lost in Space, because he always really disturbed me. Oh God, Billy Mummy.
I didn't know you made.
I loved him, really. I loved all those people from Lost in Space. I had huge crushes on the guys. God, I can even remember the younger guy was an actor called Mark Goddard. Isn't that terrifying that I remembered his name? But no, I used to pretend, build Lego toys of the spaceship and pretend that I was with them, because I thought I didn't belong in small town America where I was growing up. I was definitely wanted to be on a spaceship someplace.
And you did. And so here, the opening for me, the paragraph that opens the story, is one of my favorite parts of the story. I think in this story, the best part is the part that you left untold and you hint at in this paragraph at the beginning. Again, I'm trying not to spoil anything.
Oh, is this the one, as humans dance their merry destructive way through time? You mean
exactly.
In American Mutant? Yeah.
The whole paragraph and then the end where it says, the gospel according to Mikey, age 13 and a half. Yeah. Is directing my imagination immediately to what's going to happen after the end.
No, again, it would be lovely to see a movie of American Mutant. That is very nice. I wrote that. The gospel according to Mikey, age 13 and a half, because there is the diary of Adrian Mole, aged 11 and a half, and that was sort of a little bit of a take on that one.
Oh, that's right. They made a movie out of that, really a beautiful story, beautiful artwork at the beginning. It reminds me actually of a character from Marvel Comics, except this is like a kid version of Arcade. I don't know if any of you guys knows Arcade from the Spider-Man stories. He's got kind of red-looking hair, and he always has these flashy white suits with like the American flag on it. And he has like this place called Murder World, which is a giant amusement park that kills you. Anyway.
Oh wow! I got to check that out. That sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because my older brother, who was influential on me, and that he made me watch a bunch of horror movies and sci-fi movies when I was a kid, that completely and utterly traumatized me, which is why I was afraid to go down into the basement, which leads on to another story. And the thing with fear of basement, that's another one of my phobias, is basements. But he had a huge comic book collection, and my mother very much disapproved of that. A Mad magazine, but she really didn't have much of a basis for her disapproval. So he would just madly collect all these wonderful, and I was sort of allowed to sort of sneak into his room and look at them. And the Green Lantern and all these things were very, Spider-Man and all these things were very much part of my childhood. Batman comic books and stuff. But I wasn't really, I was allowed to go in and read sort of stuff that my dad had, like Sherlock Holmes and some sci-fi novels. That's what I started reading when I was 9 or 10, was sci-fi, which is really that another thing that sort of probably warped my brain a bit. But no, those amazing comic books from my childhood, obviously, were very influential for all of us, probably, because these ideas of superheroes, I think it's being taken a little bit to the extreme now with all the superhero movies that are out there.
Yeah.
So in this story, American Mutant, again, kind of switched gears for me a little bit while I was reading it, because this is where it started getting more into gory and graphic territory. So I would call it maybe splatterpunk a little bit. Some of the stories in this anthology are a little splatterpunk. Would that be accurate?
I think so. I mean, definitely, Polyp is splatterpunk at the end.
Yeah.
But what I like is setting stuff up that seem ordinary, right?
Sure.
You get a guy and he's, and it's all of a sudden he's, he's got a very lucrative career as a storefront preacher kind of person. And then he's confronted with this child he never knew he had. That sounds very ordinary. It sounds like, this could happen. A woman has an unfortunate thing happen to her in childhood. She becomes, shut in. That happens. All these things happen. The idea of something then becoming really grotesque and or supernatural or whatever, it's the sort of twist in the tale. One of my favorite movies, and George Clooney, talking about George again, never talks about it, is From Dusk Till Dawn. Because it's a cross-genre film. People are wary about doing cross-genre films. To me, it starts out as two psychopaths on the run, bank robbers on the run, meet a family. They go into Mexico, and then it becomes a vampire movie. It completely
switches gears. Yeah.
Vampire movie.
To me, that moment when Salma Hayek turns from an exotic dancer into like a reptile vampire creature was one of the biggest, most shocking moments, because I had no idea this was going to happen.
This exact same thing happened to me, because
and
I never saw any previews for that movie, so I thought it was like a Quentin Tarantino kind of a movie. And I went and saw it in the theater, and it was just jaw-dropping, like, what just happened?
We actually... I took a couple of young friends. They were gobsmacked, and it was just, I thought, I love this.
Yeah.
But, no one ever talks about From Dusk Till Dawn. Of course, Rodriguez has now done the TV series, which is great, and you get more of an explanation of things. And I really enjoyed the TV series because I just love those characters so much. And it was great to see them get a more expanded role.
Yeah.
But, that's why I like, though, is a kind of twist where you think things are normal and then they're not. And to be perfectly honest, in Botophobia, which is, less of a visceral story than the other ones, but that little room, that was really in the house that I lived in, that locked room. And when it was finally opened and the people took their stuff out, there was just that baby carriage in there.
Oh, please tell me there was no cat in there.
No, there wasn't a cat.
There too?
That's another story that somebody told me. They went into their attic and found a cat like that. So, and I used to beg my dad, because it was during the Cold War, to build a fallout shelter. Mm-hmm. And he said exactly what the father says in the story. What's the point? We'll be there for 30 years. We'll probably starve to death, and we'll come out and there'll be nothing there. We might as well just die in one big flaming sort of atomic flash, which was no comfort.
I admire the pragmatism of that, but at the same time, I feel like that. I would like to give it a try.
Yeah. Well, what was that? There was a wonderful Brendan Fraser movie where his father's a scientist and he has a fallout shelter, and they go down into the fallout shelter because
is it Blast from the Past?
Is that the movie?
Yeah, I think so. It's got Christopher Walken in it.
Christopher Walken, Sissy Spacek, and they're still drinking martinis, and it's. It was very funny. I think maybe I was probably the only person who found that film funny, but that was just because my, fallout shelter obsession as a child,
Oh, and speaking of martinis, there are a lot of vodka martinis in this book.
People drink martinis. I
counted them. There's 7.
Really? Oh, no. When you do like I did do a lot of editing to make sure there were not too many repetitions of things. And, just to make sure there aren't too many, bad words over, the same descriptions of sexual acts and stuff like that. You have to make it a bit different. So there is a light editing throughout the collection of stories to make sure that certain events aren't repeated. I do seem to have a sort of little theme of insemination, zombies, aliens, demonic.
Well, I totally thought it was a thing with the vodka martini.
I didn't realize that there was a heavy repetition. Of course, Trish and Deb have the apple martini. I know that Valeska has a martini.
True.
Who else has a martini?
In Writer's Block, there's one.
So I totally thought this was like a recurring thing you were putting through the book for us to find.
Well, vodka martinis are a recurring theme in my life.
Exactly.
Yes.
I actually have a wonderful cocktail recipe for you after this. It's called a Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, good. Oh, God. Okay. No, it's kind of a little tradition that at some point during a convention, Simon Bamford and I always like to go and have a martini, and but one time I met up with Claire Higgins, and she said, "Okay, darling, where are those martinis?" After a convention. I said, "Oh, Claire, I'm just going to have a margarita tonight." And she went, "Coward."
Was that at Monster Mania in New Jersey?
Yes, I think it was. Yes. Yes, exactly. Oh gosh, she is such a laugh to be with. She's so funny and smart, intelligent, brilliant woman. And I think it's her performance and the first two Hellraisers that really make it for me. Of course I love the Cenobites. Of course I love Pinhead. But it's Julia, the amazing diva, that is the heart of the film for me.
Of course, the thing about vodka martinis is if you have too many, you might have bad dreams and you wake up and there's a dwarf on your chest.
Smooth segue.
Which kind of leads us to our next story, which is called the Albdrucker. I think I'm pronouncing it right.
Well, again, this was from the Demologica Biblica, and I had to find a demon, and I was given A. Again, it's wonderful. It's a really great little thing for a writer. It's a good discipline for somebody else to say, okay, you've got to write a story beginning with A, or the character. I've known people who've had sleep paralysis, and I've sometimes suffered from it myself.
Oh, wow. So
some of those things actually, were very much written from the heart. Mm-hmm. That happened to the poor character in that story. So, but the painting Cauchemar by Fuseli. Mm-hmm. It's a very famous painting, and they use it as part of the poster for the film Gothic, written by Stephen Volk, that starred Julian Sands and Natasha Richardson, and about that night where Mary Shelley thought up Frankenstein. There's a little demon sitting on this woman's chest and a blind horse coming out of the background. It's really terrifying painting from the 19th century or something. And that is an Albdruck. That little creature.
It's from 1781 from Fuseli. Yeah. There's several versions actually. There's more than one. There's at least two different versions of it. And it's one of my favorite paintings, really. That is fabulous.
It's one of mine too. Yeah, I used to be. It was a school of art that it was about fantastical, dreamlike, nightmarish type subject matter, and Fuseli was one of the proponents of it, that particular school, and that painting is at the forefront of it. I have got a whole book of it, and I can't remember what the school of art was called, but no, that was wonderful, and it was truly the thing that inspired me. As soon as I thought, what is that little guy on that chest? And think, is there some way of working sleep paralysis into it?
Oh, that explains it.
Again,
okay.
It's like, yeah, because that is that feeling of pressure on the chest that you also feel. But the Albdruck is, in German mythology, responsible for everything that I write about. Albdrucks is, they nibble on your nipples. Strange, but that's the German people thought that's why they had sleep paralysis, because a demon was sitting on their chest. Nasty.
The demon in the Le Cauchemar of Fuseli is supposed to be an incubus, and your story is kind of a different take on the incubus character.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, looking into those kind of sleep demon kind of things, a lot of them were like that, either succubus or incubus kind of characters who did very naughty things to those poor people. But
this story also put me away from tennis for life. Really.
I was going to bring that up about the tennis stuff.
Yeah.
I like the way I like the last line of the story. It's like, well, I don't want to spoil it, but it has a good last line for anybody who gets the book. It's pretty funny.
It wasn't a good day to be a sleep center technician.
No, those poor people. Yeah. No, it's funny because actually a friend of mine went into a sleep clinic because he had very disturbed sleep, and I think he had to have some sort of little operation done on his nasal passages, septum, deviated septum.
Oh, okay.
And it caused, he had
Sleep
very
apnea.
bad sleep. Sleep, that's it.
Yeah.
That's
apnea,
it.
where you stop breathing during your sleep and you start getting blue in the face and then you wake up.
And I would just thought, how could you sleep? How could you sleep with all that stuff?
I went through that sleep study also.
I've got to wear a mask.
Oh, horrible.
It takes a while to get used to.
Uh-huh.
Actually, I've got another friend who has to do the mask, but I'll never forget in Sleepless in Seattle. I think it's Meg Ryan's partner, who's played by the wonderful Bill Pullman, also wears a mask during the night, and you just hear this sort of hissing and sort of things coming, and you think, how can you sleep with that? But how can you sleep through a sleep clinic?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The sleep clinic is horrible.
I think just to sort of explain more, a lot of my inspirations come from the nightmares I've had. Some of the dreams that are in the Venus complex that my serial killer has suffered from, I think it's probably because of all the research I had to do. Some of those dreams are things that I actually had myself. I won't say which ones, but it's fascinating how, things are worked out in your, unconscious or subconscious or something, and they pop out in dreams, and that's why I find those kind of things are interesting things to explore as far as the stories are concerned. Some of those dreams that he has, they're sort of swimming through the sea and or even Valeska has a dream like that, and being underwater for some reason. It's kind of very strange dreams that I've sometimes
that haunts
experienced.
her. It's really more of a haunting, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, Valeska is your take on the vampire genre, and it's another one of my favorites right here.
Oh, great, thanks.
I love the way that you kind of did a offshoot of the vampire genre, and how well it works, and how naughty it is, really.
Yeah. Do you know what? I just want to say, this story begins with, that little phrase, the Chinese proverb, which I won't say because it gives it away a little bit. But that's a real Chinese proverb.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I looked it up.
Yeah. And but I did say, did think to myself, I think I started writing this story quite a long time ago, and it was right at the height of the whole twinkly Twilight vampire stuff, and I thought, this isn't what it used to be.
Yeah.
I don't want sort of angst-ridden teens. Yawn. I want something powerful and sexy, and it just seemed to sap the lifeblood out of a genre I loved.
They're not supposed to be cuddly. They're predators. They should act like predators.
Yeah, and I actually rewatched Interview with the Vampire again, just to give myself, because I remember thinking it was such a beautifully stylish film, and all the fuss about Tom Cruise playing Lestat.
Well, I think after the movie came out, that mostly went away.
Yes, because he's a wonderful actor, and he's great, and it's a beautifully told tale of
Pitt,
books.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt's fabulous, and I've read the first 3 of her Anne Rice's books. Lestat was my favorite. I think it was the second one, his story.
Yeah.
I just loved that. And then there was Queen of
the Damned.
The Queen of the Damned. Yeah. But I did Interview with the Vampire was a stunning book, and it was and that was inspirational to me to read that. I've tried twice now to watch the first Twilight film. I couldn't get through it.
How'd that go?
I couldn't get through it. I couldn't finish it. I just thought, oh my God. It's just that I had to I've had some experience with adolescence, and I just I didn't want to sort of relive it. I thought it's irritating enough when you're living it, and you did to watch it on screen. Although a friend of mine said it was, an excellent, almost take on that, if you're an adolescent and you're a vampire. But I don't know. It's a kid's film for me. I just wasn't really interested in it.
So the origin of the Sanguine story, it transported me to the real life events of the famine in Europe, especially around Russia and places like that. And I thought that was brilliant the way you kind of worked that out into the story of how they would eventually evolve into something different.
Well, that gene, I can't remember what it was, a CCTV or something, is that if you possess that gene, it exists. It's out there. It's real. And when I came across that in my research, I went, that's cool. It gives you a kind of immunity against AIDS and smallpox and the plague and stuff like that. That's how some people survived. But all those statistics that are in there are real. And it's the whole thing about how people blamed, you think about there aren't, back in the, whenever it was, I can't remember the date exactly, but when the plague first happened, you just go, well, hold on, there are no doctors. It's only, magic and, all this stuff. And people would kill cats thinking it was, the witches' familiars, and they were the ones who could have killed the rats who were carrying the disease. I mean, the irony, and there's just no defense against this. Unless you were just the possessor of this lucky gene. But I suppose I just sort of put myself into, if you were a woman who was starving to death and you wanted your child to live, what would you do? There is some kind of protein and stuff in blood, so why not do that? And it's just how it could have started. It was just my sort of take on how it could have started in an unsupernatural way.
I'm sorry. I was going to say Ryan is the only one of us who has a kid, so I think he knows as far as he would go to, protect his child.
You would do anything.
Oh, yeah.
You would do. I know that for absolute fact. You would do anything to protect your child, unless you're a psychopath. But so it's and make your child live beyond anything that if you had to die for your child, you would. Mm-hmm. I don't have children myself, but I have step kids, and so I know how these things go. So, but I just wanted to do something a bit different. And so far I haven't heard anybody else who came up with my idea. So.
Definitely innovated in the genre of vampire story.
Oh, thank you.
And of course, there's also one of my favorite illustrations in the story, which is from Danielle Serra. So that's also a wonderful illustration for the story right here.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I just love the work of everybody. That's because they're all so different. It's wonderful to see all these different sort of takes on the stories from these wonderful artists.
I just wanted to say, I think this is that Valeska is a great story. You should continue. It does have a open-ended ending to it, if you ask me.
Oh gosh, yeah. No, like I said before, I did that on purpose because I thought I didn't want to wind things up too thoroughly, and also I didn't want to have to end up some kind of battle. But this has got a big scope. I love using this expression. As soon as I heard this expression, I thought, oh, this is so wonderful to grasp hold of as you're trying to desperately to describe what you're writing as the narrative arc of the story. And it does have, if the arc is is not completed, but that's because there will be more of her.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Also, like
she's a great character,
Structure your stories. You start the story, you got a non-linear type of style of writing in some of your stories that I like.
I'm for the most part. It's funny though, because when I first started doing the Venus Complex, somebody said, "Oh, you're far too linear." I went, "Oh, is that a bad thing?" But I think that with some things, yes, I do like to jump backwards and forwards, and mix things up a little bit.
Yeah,
kind of writing, that style.
Yeah.
And speaking of jumping, we jump into the second part of the Cilician Pandoric trilogy. It's Act 2 of the story, and I think this this part is where it gets really exciting, and it's very promising, of course. We know that some big things are going to happen in part 3. And I really like the way you expanded the mythology of this whole, Hellraiser-style universe, really.
Well, and I found there were a couple of direct references to the first Hellraiser movie, too, that you call Pinhead lead Cenobite.
Yeah.
And also the reference to the monkish cells, which I think Doug Bradley had mentioned in an interview that there was something that wasn't included in the movie, was them coming out of these monkish cells.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. He said, and I think he even implied that it was filmed, but it just never made it into the movie.
Oh, right. Well, that must have been in the first movie.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, I think basically what has to, as far as these stories are concerned, they have to be pretty much based on the Hellbound Heart novella, for legal reasons and stuff. Mm-hmm. Sister Celise isn't my character from the movie. She is a female Cenobite.
Oh, okay.
And if you read the Hellbound Heart novella by Clive, which is where it all began, the lead Cenobite is actually female.
A female, yeah. At the beginning, yeah.
At the beginning, which is really fascinating. And I think they made the decision, probably quite rightly, that having 3 strong female characters, to have the nemesis of Julia, if you like, and Kirsty being female probably would have been too much for
the female
audiences.
did have more speaking in the novel than the other Cenobites.
Exactly. So but to use the words Pinhead would have been, encroaching upon the movie territory too much. So that's why I went back to lead Cenobite.
It also does feel kind of weird calling him that.
It is. It's not very sexy, is it? But I don't think Pinhead's very sexy, actually. I think Clive prefers to call him Hell Priest, which is sexy, but that's Clive's thing. That's right. So I could have called him Bob, or I suppose I should have made up a name for him.
Yeah. I want to bring up this opportunity to talk to you about, you already did a statement on your page, but there's the news that the surgeon scene from Hellbound, or at least some footage of that from behind the scenes maybe, has been revealed. And I would like to tell everybody that Doug Bradley has also done a statement on his Facebook page. So I'm going to share that in the podcast page after this. But
right, I must go and check. I think I might have done, because basically we were there. We were all dressed up, all gored up, and as far as I know, we might have run through a few lines for a camera test or something. That's all I can think this is. I don't remember the cameras running, and I know that Doug has often said it's never been filmed. Obviously, they did. The cameras were running, but then somebody went, oh no, we can't afford to do the transformation of the surgeons to the Cenobites, because it would have cost £50,000 or something to do that transformation scene for both of us. And so it was decided to scrap the scene. I'm surprised they actually did film it. So I'm there has been a bit of bitterness. I've spotted on some of the forums going, they always told us it was never filmed.
Yes.
We didn't know. Sorry. Also, you have to remember, and this is 1988, people. Okay? This is it's a long time ago. And, we're not getting any younger. And for us to remember, some one of my friends on Facebook said, was that, motion that you did, touching your wound, was that, did you come up with that yourself, or you were directed? And I thought, how can I say that I can't really remember, But since the female Cenobite in the first, Grace also made that motion of stroking her disturbing vagina-shaped wound. Exactly. And then, I did it as well. I'm sure it was directed from the director.
Well, and people get indignant also, I think, because they just assumed that because it was on the back of the VHS box that it had to be in the movie, or it had to be a deleted scene.
I curse the VHS box designer that he ever put those pictures up there, because that's why, people watch it and they don't see the scene.
Yeah, where is
and
this?
They think they've been gypped.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And Yes, so it was so horrible that they cut it. That was the scuttlebutt that went around for years.
It was so controversial or so violent or whatever that it had to be cut.
It wasn't.
Yeah,
it was just two surgeons meet Kirsty and Tiffany, and they turn into us, and they scream and they run the other way. Right? That was it. That was the scene.
There you go, folks.
Exactly. And the producers in their wisdom said, why should we spend another £50,000 to film this? It's not really necessary. There's also a scene where Chatterer gets his hand caught in the elevator as well. But that was kind of, I don't know why that was cut. It sounds, I don't think we ever see them in the elevator.
That's actually in a trailer. Yeah, you can see that in the trailer from England, I think, an early trailer that shows
really?
Chatterer screaming into the elevator door, and then he sticks his fingers and the door closes on them. So, it was cut. So there you go.
Were his fingers supposed to get cut off?
Yes, they were supposed to get cut off.
I think basically what happened is because of the way that the glove or the prosthetic, because it wasn't Nick's arm, actually. It was just a prosthetic arm.
Yeah.
And the way the fingers squished together, it ended up being a middle finger stuck up, and which of course was unintentional hilarity. You don't, nowadays, of course the director would put that in because it's funny, because all the shocks are now supposed to be funny as well. A lot of these films are, horror films have moments of hilarity in them, but that it was deemed far too, silly for a film as serious. I mean, there aren't a lot of yucks in either the first or the second film, let's face it,
So we already started talking a little bit during the conversation about Gaia. It had a previous title called Uranophobia.
Uranophobia, yes. Well, Uranus was the god of the sky. Exactly. And he, as the story says, he would rape his wife every night, and then she'd give birth to another god would pop out, and he'd stuff her back into her womb, which is very, boy, those Greeks, they came up with some very nasty horror stories.
Yep, you open it with a crash course on the Greek myths. That's right.
Yes, yeah, and it's funny because it is this idea of this Greek mom filling her little girl's head with these what she thinks is it's part of our heritage, and it's so wonderful and rich, and and meanwhile just completely traumatizing the child. It's funny because you don't think about that when you're telling your kids things like the Three Little Pigs, but then they might have a wolf phobia. You never know what you're going to create in the minds of over-imaginative children.
Or even lullabies like that Rockabye Baby is about
and your baby will fall?
that falls out of a tree in a
treetop.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh man, no! I used to have a book of those fables, and there was a baby in the tree, and I went, "Gee, terrifying stuff."
Yeah.
No,
and when you go to the German stuff, the Teutonic stuff, it's all like,
don't.
The little kid who didn't cut his nails, and he didn't cut his hair, and his nails would get all tangled up.
The shock-headed Peter stuff. And my brother did a sort of learned piece in high school about Jack the Giant Killer. And I said, wow, what are those stories like? He said, you don't want to read them. They're really, really horrific. I mean, they would take skin off his back and stuff. It's just this, oh, my God, really sort of horrible tortures that we cheerfully prattle on to our kids.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why they become sick and twisted.
Well, and there's some Grimm's fairy tales that'll probably never get made into Disney movies. Like there's one where it's like some kind of imp or demon or something if a kid is sucking his thumb, he would come along with these huge scissors and cut their thumbs off.
Oh, that's the shock-headed Peter stuff. That's really nasty. They actually did a ballet or a musical part for that,
Really?
and it was absolutely supposed to be quite magical, quite bloody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when I was small, like older people would tell me that if I misbehaved, there would be a man with a huge bag who would come and take me in the bag and take me away. And it's like, that scared me so much. It was horrible.
Well, I mean, this is why, the actual film that scared me as a kid, funnily enough, was Invaders from Mars. And, it was the science fiction stuff and the aliens sort of sucking you through the ground and drilling the back of your neck. Terrified me as a child. But also Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I used to look under my bed every night for pods. Because, and it's terrible because those kind of stories sort of were taught you, or movies rather, said you can't trust anyone, even your parents.
Yeah.
Because the parents put the pods under the beds. The parents get drilled by the Martians and try and take the little kid down to get drilled as well. And it's a little moral saying, you can't, because Red's under the bed, is the
right.
fear of communism in the 50s and 60s America.
Yeah, and parents are the first line of defense for a kid. I mean, if he can't trust his parents, he's completely by himself, which is really scary.
Exactly, which is what I explored in Botophobia.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that really made a huge impression on me when I was a kid with science fiction movies.
Yeah. So this story guy is just brutal, really very brutal, really scared me. I will never look at a plastic tie again. The same way.
Yeah, that's what the Soska sisters said.
Yeah.
At the end, in their afterword, boy, we're never going to look at plastic ties in a different way now.
Oh God, and, I felt the same way right there.
Yeah, I don't know where these ideas come from, but I just thought, well, if I want her to win out over these horrible disaffected youths who come in and try and steal from her,
mm-hmm.
Then, what would she use? What would be easily to hand? I don't know where I came up with that idea. Go figure.
It's very cathartic. And then, we go full blown into splatterpunk with Polyp, really. It's,
yeah.
And the fear that a lot of people have of having colonoscopies, especially if you have to have them frequently.
Yeah. Again, it's through people I know have been through it. And I actually sent the story to someone, and he said, well, it was disgusting. And I said, well, if you want to, write a story about a giant polyp terrorizing a hospital, you've succeeded, and no, but it's sort of, again, I could write it with a bit of heart, if you like, simply because I've known people who've gone through it, but also, doing my research and realizing that the colon is called the second brain. I didn't know that.
Oh yes.
Wow, that you have like a third of the neurons, of your actual brain are in your colon. And I just thought,
really?
Wow, but of course it's it's called the second brain. The story, subtitle, Second Brain of Your Nightmares, because it has to work automatically. It's got to think for itself, because you can't sit there and go, wow, I really need to digest my food now, and it's the brain has got so much to control underneath the surface that if it had to control all the operations that your colon has to go through, digesting food and getting rid of waste matter and stuff like that, it would probably, would all be sort of, I don't know, jellyfish or something. And so...
And this story in my notes, here it is. This story mentions vodka martinis again. This is another one. Right here, vodka martinis. Yes, exactly. Well, I'm just pointing them out.
Hey.
I can't remember that one.
I'm a big James Bond fan. What can I say?
I've gotten colonoscopies probably 5 or 6 times, like every 3 years or so. In fact, I did have a polyp the last time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, you've actually had a colonoscopy?
Yeah, I get them like every 3 years or so, and I had a polyp the last time, but they knocked me out. So if any of this stuff happened, it was all cleaned up and taken care of before I was
by the time you woke up.
Yeah.
So do they have dignity shorts in America?
No. We don't get any dignity.
You flaunt it. You flaunt your butt.
That's right.
No, it is kind of, the whole concept is pretty.
Well, I mean, and they put a blanket over you, and then you get knocked out from the IV, and then, presumably they take the blanket off to do this stuff, but I don't ever see it.
It all depends on how people take it. Some people just get very relaxed and chat all the way through it, and other people get knocked out. I think nowadays they'd like to give you a little less of the stuff simply because they want to get you out sooner than later.
Well, and also this was why I found out that I had sleep apnea too, was because they're like, do you have a sleep disorder? I said, well, who cares? Just do my colonoscopy. And they said, well, if you have a sleep disorder, we don't want you to
stop breathing?
Stop breathing while you're knocked out. So I had to go do a sleep study, and I found out, oh, great, now I have sleep apnea, and I just wanted to get a colonoscopy.
Oh, dear.
It never rains that it pours.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, my last note for polyp is that the polyp reminds me, and I don't know, are you guys familiar with SpongeBob?
Yeah.
He has a friend called Patrick, and I kept imagining Patrick as the polyp.
Is that the starfish?
Yes.
Yeah. He's sort of like the quintessential disaffected youth of your nightmares. Obviously, I have a problem not only with basements and home invasion, but disaffected youths are high on my hate list. Yeah, it's almost as if you can imagine the polyp with a backwards baseball cap munching on his colons in the bathroom.
That's brilliant. I want to see this as a movie now, really. Yeah. Please, someone adapt this. Someone buy the rights. Send Barbie Wilde a lot of money.
Yes, please.
So, botophobia. We also touched on this a little bit. The room in the basement that your parents never let you in, where you mentioned that this basement had like this dankness, this damp room. Kind of reminded me where you said like the light was filtering through the windows, and I just kind of imagined the damp room in Hellraiser with Frank behind the door ready to pounce. That was what I got out of that scene.
Yeah, well, I think that the house that I grew up in did have an unfinished basement, and I always thought, why not finish it? But of course, it was all down to my parents didn't care; they didn't want to have it finished and stuff.
So there was really a locked room that nobody ever could go into.
Yeah. It was, and it finally got cleared out, and that all that was left was a little tiny Victorian child's baby carriage.
Wow.
And which was a wicker one. It was just like, what?
Yeah.
But why? It was so disappointing, really, because we were expecting to see lots of interesting stuff. But yeah. But that again was, the fear of going down there, even though everybody else they couldn't care less. I think it was that invaders from Mars. The fear of what's going on under the ground is it's things there.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit. There's a story called The Dad Thing, and I forgot who wrote that. It's also about dad acting weird, and then The Father Thing is by Philip K. Dick. It's a 1954 science fiction story. I recommend that as well.
Have to look that up. I haven't read that. I love Philip K. Dick. I think, my God, when you think about all the amazing things that have been based on all the amazing movies that have been based on his stories. He really is, what an imagination, up there with Clive and Ramsey Campbell and all the my favorites.
Yeah.
But there was something sort of very strange about his stuff. I mean, I sort of honestly, I love my father to bits. My science fiction reading father. And so it actually was quite painful for me to write this story where the father is kind of this complete nutcase, because that was not my dad at all.
Right.
Or is he a nutcase?
We'll never know.
Maybe not. Anyway, no, it was fun to write that one. I think it's a little bit more lighthearted than the other ones. Maybe not.
I have a quick question about writer's block, which is the
writer's block. Yeah, we haven't talked that one yet. Yeah.
So the name of the writer, he's Bartholomew Atkins, and I was wondering, is this like a nod to Peter Atkins, or is it completely coincidental?
Oh my God, no! I never even.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, I should say that from now on, though. No. Well, I wouldn't want anything to happen to sweet Peter, like that happens to poor old Bart here. No. I didn't even think about that. But obviously all these things are swirling around in the back of your head, I suppose. But thinking up character names has always been sort of the least fun for me. but I don't know why I came up with Bartholomew Atkins. I think Laura Winchester is the name of a witch. I think
Exactly.
I got her.
Oh.
Her I think I may have gotten her name from, because they have everything written in
Witch Trial?
Yes. Yeah, but it's all on the internet, and if you go into, famous witchcraft trials of, whatever 1650, you'll find that in the Azizas of whatever, Laura Winchester was found to have, killed this geezer's pig.
My gosh.
So yes. So
They even burned cats at the stake. It was just a terrible time.
Oh, I know. It was a bad time. Bad time for women and cats. Definitely.
This story is another story that mentions vodka martinis. That's another note here on my notebook.
Oh, no. Yes.
I'm sorry I keep bringing it up. I just thought it was funny.
No, I think it's utterly delightful that you picked out this sort of little subtext through all my stories.
And I will send you that vodka martini recipe after this.
Yes, please do. Yeah, I'm always looking for new recipes.
So that was writer's block, and the story, wow, it's got a lot of tension in this story. And I think at the beginning, I'm wondering if your depiction of traveling to a convention, and especially, being that you are in the convention circle, that there's a lot of realism in this routine of going and sitting at the table and going at the bar and staying at the hotel.
Well, I think a lot of these things are, this is more writers' conventions. I think when you do horror conventions, I'm going as, an actress who writes. And it's a very different experience than to go to literary events.
Right.
But yes, no, there's a lot of bar activity in any convention because both writers and actors they have a tendency to imbibe certain alcoholic drinks a little bit more than, say, the general population.
Vodka martinis.
Vodka martinis, red wine, Chablis.
Exactly.
So this is, I don't think I strayed too far from reality there. When I sent the story to Dean Drinkle, who was the editor on the Grimorium Verum, he thought it was very funny. I recognize a few of those incidents.
So you end this book with a perfect conclusion, which is the third part of the Silesium Rebellion. This is where everything comes to an end, and everything happens really in this story. It's really a great ending to the anthology. I thought it's fantastic. I only have one issue with the story, which is poor lead Cenobite. I don't want to say what happens to him, but he's depicted as he's not a very sympathetic boss to women in hell.
Oh, what a shocker. No, and I think that pub, passed him by a bit. No. Well, see, that sort of amused me, the idea of making that there's a glass ceiling for women even in hell. I actually thought that was kind of funny. And, males are sort of rather dominant, and so it is makes sense. And let's face it, when you see the characters in the movies, which of course has nothing to do with these stories, that there is, that kind of wonderful arrogance that, Pinhead and even all the Cenobites have. They're all rather arrogant beings in their own way. That's why it kind of amused me. I think if I did want to expand it, I've often felt that it was kind of a quick battle, if you like, but I didn't want to go into too much detail again because of the idea of expanding it for later. Basically.
I like the idea of Sister Celise assembling this sort of super group of female characters from the past.
Yeah.
Instead of the A team, it's the D for demon team. Yeah. Well, it says all these women who are kind of pissed off at the way they've been treated over the millennium. So I like putting
that even Lilith got along with each other.
Yes, exactly. Good old Lilith.
Yeah.
But no, I'd just like to throw in, Joan of Arc, because I always thought she got a bit of a raw deal. But it's, her best friend was Gilles de Rais, which if you go back to The Hellbound Heart, he's got a mention, and have something to do with the writings of Gilles de Rais was mentioned about, the
yes,
original
right.
Lament configuration.
In The Hellbound
and
Heart,
so Yeah, and so I just thought it was kind of a nice thing to bring her back. Because I remember reading a novel years ago about, it was a fantasy story, but it had Gilles de Rais in it, it had Joan of Arc in it. And the reason he became, the monster he did was because he was so appalled at what happened to her utter betrayal, by the French to the English. So, it's sort of a nice little thing to have her in the team. And Cleopatra the Alchemist did exist. She is a historical character. Yeah.
Okay. Overshadowed
there are two Cleopatras.
By the other Cleopatra.
Exactly. But she was supposedly one of the ones who actually did do the, nice little tie-in with the Venus complex of being an alchemist and being able to turn base metals into gold, which of course is probably impossible, but hey, you never know. And of course Eve, who, chip on her shoulder since she got tossed out of the garden. So no, it was a nice team, but I would like to expand that story a bit more too, because I think it's this rich for exploitation.
Oh, absolutely. You took this in a completely different direction than I expected in terms of the hell setting and what happens. And I really enjoyed the original direction in which you took it and the new characters that you've introduced. This was really a fantastic ending to the anthology. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot because, like I said, that story was you're probably not supposed to say these things if you're a writer, but it was a difficult one to write and difficult one to tackle because it was kind of it had to be, end with a bang. And that sort of scared me a bit. But, as soon as you free yourself and say, okay, just let your imagination take over, and then all those weird things that happened at the end, I don't know where that comes from. But there is a little, the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The second film with Donald Sutherland. Uh-huh. And there's a bit where the pod takes over the homeless guy and his dog, and it turns out the dog has got the face. Oh, God. The boxer dog has got the face of the guy. Yes. That's like, Mastema has the sort of face of the boxer dog inside it for some reason. That was kind of a little, again, childhood nightmare. Little nod to the Invasion of the Body Snatchers there.
Well, fabulous. And you have the Soska sisters closing your anthology, which, it's always a pleasure.
I had a question about that, Barbie. Have you thought about working with them on a project, the Soska sisters?
I would love to. And we I think this is something that, they are very busy with their projects at the moment, but I would love to work with them. I love their work. I think American Mary was one of the, I remember just hearing about these two Canadians. Of course, I'm Canadian, so I thought, wow, this is so cool. They're from Vancouver. And they, I met them in Texas, and we met up and had a Cenobite breakfast, as we call it. And again in Chicago. And they're just absolutely really funny, incredibly intelligent, very talented, creative people. And of course I would like to work with them. But they've got their ideas that they're doing, which is fantastic. Yeah. So, we just have to see how it works out. I'd love to work with them.
So I was going to ask, Ryan, do we have any listener questions for this episode?
Yeah. We have one from Josh Gosselin. He says, your book, The Venus Complex, was amazing. Do you plan on continuing the story, or was that one and done?
Well, it's funny. I lived in Michael's head for a very long time, and everybody is asking about a sequel, and I would love to do a sequel. I think it's sort of got, it's got to be something, because I wanted to do a book about getting into the mind of the serial killer, and I think I accomplished that pretty well. And it's like getting back into that headspace it'd be interesting to see. I mean, people have asked because, he obviously has further adventures. Mm-hmm. So I think once I finish Zulu Zombies, the script, then I should because a lot of people have asked about it, and it would be wonderful to get back into him again. Because I love Michael. I think he's really funny. I know he's reprehensible, of course, because he's a serial killer. Yeah. One has to put in these politically correct things. But, I actually think a lot of what always surprised me about the reaction to that book, is the how people seem to agree with his rather outrageous opinions about the world events, which
that's a little scary.
Mm-hmm. It is a bit scary, because I just let myself have free reign. I said, okay, if I was a serial killer, what would I think about this?
Yeah.
So or even just an angry person who doesn't care about being politically correct. So that's where. But definitely, yes, I do have plans to write the short answer.
Excellent. Excellent.
I think if somebody starts reading that book and going, this guy makes a lot of sense, they should be worried about themselves.
Yes, I think so too. Oh dear, but no. I mean, I can understand, the attractions there are to him, because he does make a good point.
So you're working on a book called Sailor?
No, this is a musical.
Oh, okay.
This is a musical drama.
Okay, it said in the bio a book, and it said musical drama for stage and screen. So
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a musical drama. It's set in the ruins of post-war Marseille, and it's sort of an idea that's been around for a long time, and it's going to be, it's. I'm just working on the sort of the script, and someone else is doing the music. I'm not doing the music.
All right.
But again, it's not like a happy clappy musical. It's quite serious and has some. Horrible things that happen. Of course, if I'm involved, it has to have horrible things.
Well, we'll be looking forward to hearing more about that, and we won't keep you any longer.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming and talking to us.
Oh, well, it's been utterly delightful. I can't believe how the time has zipped past.
Yeah.
I know. Thank you so much, Barbie, for your time.
Good luck with everything.
Fun.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for all of you for taking the time to read the book, and I'm so pleased that you all liked it. And
it was.
It'll be out on Halloween on all the Amazons.
What's the website where you can pre-order it right now?
sstpublications.co.uk. Short, scary tales.
There we go. And it's Voices of the Damned.
Voices of the Damned, sstpublications.co.uk.
There we go.
There's a trade version and the deluxe edition.
I've got one pre-ordered autographed, so if you see that, you can write something to me.
I will do. Absolutely.
Right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks,
well, listen,
Barbie.
thanks again, guys. Okay, you too. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
The Clive Barker Podcast, or Barkercast, is an independent editorial fan site and podcast that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Films. This podcast and site are a labor of love by the fans for the fans. News, features, and show notes for this episode can be found at www.clivebarkercast.com. Go to iTunes and please leave us a review. Reviews really help us get the word out about Clive Barker. You can also find us on Podomatic, Xbox Music Store, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, Doubletwist, Blackberry, and Pocketcast. We have a Facebook page, so come on and like our Facebook page and join the Occupy Midian group for lots of discussion about Night Read and other Clive Barker stuff. On Twitter, we're at BarkerCast and at Occupy Midian. Opening theme by Mark Buckle.